The red light above camera 3 blinked on, bathing the Loose Women studio in that familiar, electric hush, the kind that only live television could produce. The audience settled into their seats, a low murmur of anticipation rolling like distant thunder. On the giant screens behind the panel, a dignified portrait of Sir Ian McKellen appeared, silver hair neatly combed, eyes alert with that unmistakable glint of theatrical mischief. The caption beneath his image read, "Legendary actor, activist, knight of the realm." Denise Welch glanced at the monitor, then at her notes, and finally at her co-hosts. She smiled, polished, professional, but something sharper flickered behind her eyes. Today's conversation was meant to be lively, according to the producer's briefing. A discussion about art, responsibility, and public opinion. What no one said aloud was that it was also designed to spark. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer's voice rang out, "please welcome the incomparable Sir Ian McKellen." Applause erupted as Ian strode onto the set, cane in hand, not because he needed it, but because he liked the authority it lent him. He waved graciously, nodding to the crowd, and took his seat opposite the panel. Denise leaned forward, extending a hand. "Sir Ian, it's a pleasure to have you with us," she said. "The pleasure is mine," Ian replied, his voice warm, measured. "I've always admired the courage of a live show. Anything can happen." Denise laughed lightly. "That's very true." The opening minutes passed smoothly. Ian spoke about his latest stage project, his enduring love for Shakespeare, and the importance of theater education. The audience listened raptly, hanging onto every carefully chosen word. Denise nodded along, occasionally interjecting with praise or a playful tease. Then the conversation shifted. "Sir Ian," Denise began, flipping a page on her cue card, "you've never been shy about sharing your opinions, political, social, artistic. Some people say that celebrities should stick to entertaining and leave the lecturing to others. What do you say to that?" Ian smiled, but it was a thinner smile than before. "I say that artists have always been part of the conversation. From the ancient Greeks to modern playwrights, art reflects society, and sometimes challenges it." Denise tilted her head. "But do you think there's a line? When does passion turn into preaching?" A murmur rippled through the audience. Ian folded his hands. "Preaching implies a sermon. I offer perspectives, not commandments." Denise leaned back, crossing her arms. "Some viewers feel differently. They say it can feel condescending." The temperature in the studio rose a degree. "With respect," Ian replied, his tone still calm, "condescension depends on how willing one is to listen." A few audience members clapped. Denise's smile tightened. "I'm just voicing what people at home are thinking," she said. "They love your work, but they don't always love being told how to think." Ian's eyes flicked to the camera, then back to Denise. "I've never told anyone how to think. I encourage them to think at all." The applause this time was louder. Denise exhaled slowly. "Let's talk about responsibility. You've criticized certain media outlets, even shows like this one, for what you call sensationalism. Yet here you are." Ian chuckled. "Ah, the irony hasn't escaped me. But criticism doesn't mean avoidance. It means engagement." Denise leaned forward now, her voice firmer. "Engagement is one thing, disrespect is another. Some would argue you've crossed that line." Ian's eyebrows lifted. "By asking questions. By implying," Denise shot back, "that presenters and journalists lack integrity." Ian's voice hardened just slightly. "If the shoe fits." Gasps fluttered through the audience. A co-host shifted uncomfortably, glancing toward the producer's table. The red light remained on. Denise straightened in her chair. "So you are saying we lack integrity?" "I'm saying," Ian replied carefully, "that integrity is proven through action, not defense." The studio felt suddenly smaller, the air thicker. Denise's cheeks flushed. "That's incredibly unfair." "Truth can feel unfair," Ian said softly. The audience erupted, half applause, half shocked silence. Denise raised a hand, signaling for quiet, but the sound lingered like an echo. "You come onto this show," she said, her voice now edged with steel, "and you insult the very people giving you a platform." Ian met her gaze without blinking. "A platform is not a shield." One of the co-hosts tried to interject. "Maybe we should." "No," Denise said sharply, eyes never leaving Ian. "I want this answered. Do you believe shows like Loose Women are harmful?" Ian paused. The cameras zoomed in, capturing the flicker of calculation in his eyes. I believe any show can be harmful if it values outrage over understanding. Denise laughed, but there was no humor in it. That sounds like a yes. It sounds like a warning, Ian replied. A producer's voice crackled faintly through Denise's earpiece, urging her to move on. She ignored it. You know, Denise said, some people would say this is exactly the kind of elitism they're tired of. The idea that an actor, no matter how decorated, gets to lecture working people. Ian leaned forward for the first time. I am a working person. I've worked my entire life. And I've listened. Have you? The question landed like a slap. Denise's eyes flashed. Don't patronize me. I'm not, Ian said. I'm challenging you. The audience was fully divided now, some cheering, others shaking their heads. Social media monitors in the control room lit up with alerts, hashtags multiplying by the second. Denise stood abruptly. This interview is becoming disrespectful. Ian rose as well, gripping his cane. Disrespectful to whom? To this show, Denise snapped. And to its viewers. Ian's voice dropped, resonant and commanding. Viewers deserve honesty, not comfort. For a moment, no one spoke. The silence was deafening. Denise took a breath, visibly steadying herself. Sir Ian, perhaps it's best we take a break. Ian inclined his head slightly. If you wish. She turned toward the camera, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. We'll be right back after the break. The music swelled, the lights dimmed, and the red light finally clicked off. But behind the scenes, the tension only intensified. Producers rushed onto the set, whispering urgently. Denise paced, jaw clenched. Ian stood apart, calm as ever, gazing at the darkened audience seats as if they were the stalls of a grand theater. A producer approached him. Sir Ian, perhaps you could leave. Ian finished gently. The producer hesitated. Just cool things down. Ian smiled, a sad, knowing smile. Sometimes the truth has a temperature of its own. Across the set, Denise turned sharply. If he can't respect this show, he shouldn't be on it. Ian heard her. He turned, meeting her eyes one last time. Respect is earned, Denise. Not demanded. The producer swallowed hard. Sir Ian, we're going to have to ask you to step off set. A ripple of shock passed through the crew. Ian nodded once, dignified to the end. Very well. As he picked up his coat and began to walk away, the doors to the studio opening before him, the audience, still seated, still watching, rose to their feet. Applause thundered, echoing off the walls. Denise stood frozen, the sound washing over her. The red light flickered back on. And the confrontation was far from over, the moment Sir Ian McKellen disappeared through the studio. Doors, the Loose Women set felt hollow, like a theater after the curtain has fallen too early. The applause that had followed him still echoed faintly in the walls, an unwelcome reminder of how completely the moment had slipped out of control. Denise Welch remained standing, hands planted on the table, staring at the space where Ian had been moments before. The cameras were live again. Millions were watching. Well, she said at last, forcing a tight smile, that was unexpected. No one laughed. One of the co-hosts cleared her throat. These conversations can get passionate. Passionate is one word for it, Denise replied sharply. Disrespectful is another. In the control room, producers exchanged anxious glances. Social media dashboards were exploding. Hashtag Ian McKellen, hashtag Loose Women Clash, hashtag Denise vs Ian, all trending within minutes. Clips of the confrontation were already circulating, edited, slowed down, dramatized further by captions screaming icons silenced live on air. Backstage, Ian moved calmly through the corridor, his footsteps unhurried. A young production assistant hovered nearby, clearly unsure whether to speak. I'm sorry, Sir Ian, she said quietly. I didn't expect it to go like that. Ian smiled kindly. Neither did I, my dear. But theater has always thrived on the unexpected. As he reached the exit, his phone buzzed. Then buzzed again, and again. Messages poured in, friends, fellow actors, activists, journalists. One text stood out, from an old colleague. You didn't just walk off a show. You walked into history. Ian slipped the phone into his pocket and stepped outside, greeted by a small but growing crowd of reporters who had already been tipped off. Sir Ian, do you regret what happened? Were you silenced? Were you kicked off? Ian paused, turning slowly to face them. Cameras clicked furiously. I wasn't silenced, he said evenly. I was finished speaking. The quote went viral within seconds. Inside the studio, Denise's composure was beginning to crack. During the ad break, she paced in tight circles while producers murmured reassurance. "You did nothing wrong," one insisted. "He was confrontational." Denise shook her head. "He came here looking for a fight." Another producer hesitated. "Public opinion isn't entirely on our side right now." Denise stopped pacing. "Public opinion changes." But doubt flickered across her face. When the show returned from break, Denise addressed the camera directly. "We welcome strong opinions on loose women," she said, voice controlled but strained. "But we also believe in respect, for our panel, and for our audience." Within minutes, critics pounced. Clips were replayed alongside captions pointing out the irony of lecturing about respect after escorting a guest off live television. That evening, Ian sat in his study, a cup of tea cooling untouched beside him, as news channels replayed the confrontation on a loop. Analysts dissected every word, every glance, every pause. One commentator declared, this wasn't just a TV argument. It was a cultural clash, authority versus platform. Another countered, no guest has the right to hijack a show. Ian watched silently, then turned the television off. He opened his laptop and began to type. An hour later, a short statement appeared on his official social media accounts. Conversation is not combat. If asking difficult questions causes discomfort, perhaps discomfort is where growth begins. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Actors, writers, and even politicians shared the post. Fans flooded the comments with messages of support. Denise, meanwhile, sat alone in her dressing room, scrolling through her own mentions. The praise was there, but buried beneath waves of criticism. One comment stopped her cold. "You didn't challenge him. You shut him down." The next morning, newspapers splashed the story across their front pages. McKellen removed after on-air clash. Loose women loses control. Who really crossed the line? Producers called an emergency meeting. The network wanted damage control. "We need a response," an executive said. A measured one. Denise folded her arms. "I'm not apologizing for standing my ground." "No one's asking you to," the executive replied carefully. "But we might consider inviting him back." The room fell silent. "Invite him back," Denise repeated. "After he insulted us." After the audience sided with him, the executive corrected. "This story isn't going away." That afternoon, Ian received an unexpected email, a private request from the network, proposing a follow-up, a calm conversation, off live television. Ian read it twice, then smiled faintly. He replied with a single line. "I'm always willing to talk. I'm not willing to perform reconciliation." The message leaked within hours. Denise watched the news break from home, her jaw tightening. She felt cornered, by the network, by public opinion, by a man who had walked away and somehow gained more power by doing so. 2 days later, Loose Women opened with Denise addressing the controversy once more. "I've reflected," she said slowly. "And while I stand by my right to challenge any guest, I acknowledge that the conversation became more heated than intended. It wasn't an apology, but it was close enough to be noticed." That same night, Ian appeared somewhere no one expected, a small independent theater, standing on stage before a modest audience. No cameras, no panel, just him. "Art," he said, voice echoing softly, "is not meant to soothe us into silence. It's meant to wake us." The audience rose in a standing ovation. By the end of the week, the story had evolved from scandal to symbol. Media schools debated it. Opinion columns referenced it. The confrontation became shorthand for a larger question: who controls the conversation? Denise returned to her routine, but something had shifted. The show felt different, edgier, more cautious. Viewers watched more closely now. As for Ian McKellen, he returned to the stage where he felt most at home, the echoes of applause reminding him that while television could cut a conversation short, it could never have the final word. Because sometimes, walking away isn't defeat. Sometimes, it's the most powerful line of dialogue there is.